Hello and welcome everybody to another one of our weekly webinars. This is Daniel here from the CPD Standards Office. I'm joined today by Nigel from People in Flow and the CPD Standards very own founder, Amanda Rosewarne. Today we're going to be looking at how to overcome the challenges of managing remotely. So it promises to be a very interesting session. I'm sure all of the people on are most likely managers, so there's going to be a lot of notes to be taken. We have Nigel. I won't get into the introduction too early, actually. I'll hold that back for now. But let's go through a few housekeeping rules. Like I say, welcome to everyone on the call. We've still got people coming through, just letting them through now. Welcome everyone. If we can, one of the housekeeping rules are for the videos to be turned off. So please do turn off the videos on entry into the room. Would be much appreciated. Thank you very much, Peter, for doing that. We do also have a chat etiquette that we would like you all to follow. Like I always say, please, no conversations about cats and dogs or weather in the chat. We do have, again, nice weather in the UK, which is fantastic. I hope you do have good weather wherever you are, whatever time zone you're on this webinar from. So please do use the chat for questions. I'm happy to receive any questions in the chat. We will be having our Q&A session at the end of the session where Nigel and Amanda will be answering your questions. So please do anything that comes to mind, fill up the chat with those questions. And also any supportive remarks that you have, like, oh, great point, or anything like that would be nice to see in the chat as well. Like I said, Q&A opportunities at the end. We have actually received, again, a few pre-webinar questions, which we will be answering at the end of the session. So please do get more over to us by using that chat. Last week, we had a brilliant webinar. For those that was with us last week, it was around LinkedIn, and I'm sure a lot of you got some really great tips from that one. We will be sending out some information about the follow-up for that webinar, which is open for our members. So that will be going out shortly. Today's webinar ran off the back of last week's poll, is overcoming challenges when managing remotely. So thank you very much for signing up for that. And I'm sure we're going to try our best to answer any challenges that you do have. So any specific challenges that you are currently going through, please put those in the chat. We do have a poll to run just now. So we have our first poll for you guys, and it's just the standard poll that we run at the beginning of every session. We just want to get an understanding of who's on the webinar with us. So that should be coming up on your screen just now. So if you can take a moment just to answer that one for us. We just want to know if you are one of our members already, or if you are a potential prospect member and you're interested, or if you're just interested and you're here just to learn a bit about how and to gain some skills about managing remotely. So please do just answer that one for me. Answers are coming in. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Give you another 5 seconds on that one. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And we're just going to also run one more poll now for you guys. I just want to know what you would like to hear from us next week. So what topic would you like us to be speaking on or speaking to next week? So that one's going to come out to you just now as well. You should be seeing that on your screens now. For people just coming into the room, you should have a poll up on your screen, hopefully. If you could just answer that one for us. So what topic do you want us to present on in the coming weeks? So anything that you guys are currently struggling with, or you need a bit more guidance around, or just a bit more knowledge, and you want an expert to come in and speak to you on this, please do just make that selection for us so we can get that sorted out for you and in the pipe. We are going to be talking on most of these topics that are here, but we do just want to know what you guys are after and what you guys want now. So thank you very much. Ending that poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm not going to keep up any more time. What I'm going to do now is go straight into the introductions of our first speaker. So like I said, we've got 2 speakers again today. Very lucky. Last week we had 2. This week we also have 2. Today we have Nigel Gerling, who brings 25 years of managerial experience. Oh, sorry, I'm rushing ahead. So I skipped this slide. So we do, like I said, we have 2 speakers. It's going to be split. It's running over 50 minutes. Nigel's going to take the lion's share of that 50 minutes with his presentation, and then it's going to be followed up by Amanda. And recording and slides are going to be available after the webinar, so no need to put those in the comments. We are aware, and we are going to be sending those out to you. The Q&A session at the end may overrun, depending on how many questions we get fired at us. So if it does, do not worry. We are going to be getting out the recording, and it is going to have the full Q&A session on there as well. So that's going to be coming out to you guys shortly. This is the part I wanted. Here we go. So Nigel, Nigel is, he brings 25 years of management experience and knowledge from various industries and from numerous parts of the world, or I think every part of the world. It seems from UK, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, the USA, Australia, and Asia, large corporations and small. So there will definitely be some nuggets in there for everyone on this call. He's currently the program manager. Sorry, he was the program manager at Jaguar and Land Rover at one point, and he's currently now at People in Flow, which helps organizations transform their businesses and their effectiveness through improving organizational health. And a massive part of that is management, I'm sure. So without further ado, let me hand over the controls to Nigel, our first speaker. Nigel, you should be able to control that now.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Let me just, there we are. There's still a poll on the screen, Daniel.
Is there still a poll up?
Yeah.
I think that's just on your screen, Nigel.
Is it really? There we go, that's gone then. Perfect, thank you very much. So as Daniel's just said, we're going to talk about managing in a virtual environment. So this is not going to be a management skills review. This is about the essential elements of management that are impacted when we're working remotely, and what we can do to help with those. Now we're going to start off with a poll. So Daniel, do you have that available?
Yes, I do. I'm just going to put it out there now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So the poll is, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How are you doing right now with working at home? How is the current experience of that going for you? The poll should be coming up on your screens right now.
And there's no right or wrong answers here. We're not sharing this with anyone, so you can be perfectly honest.
Yes, I can confirm we definitely won't be sharing the poll's results with anyone. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got okay, we've got 48% of you, or 47% of you. Happy and doing great, 26, it's a second. Work performance is slightly wavering, slightly down, 15%. Feeling stressed, 12%. And it's good to know that nobody knows. So everyone knows where they fit, which is always a great thing. That's the end of that poll. Over to you, Nigel.
Great, thank you. There we are. Sorry, just struggling to change the slide there. So where I'm starting my my basis with is what we call inflow management, and there's lots of learned papers about what being in flow actually means. There's the original definition on the screen there. I'll let you read that. And as managers, we do want our teams to be in flow. So let's just think about what that might mean. Sports people refer to being in the zone, and I like to relate it to days where the clock's alive, time's moving quickly, things work as they should, you get jobs ticked off your to-do list, and you achieve everything that you wanted to achieve. And when you get home, you've got a big smile on your face, and you share with your partner that you've had a good day. That's being in flow. And as a manager, our job is to create an environment where our people spend as much time in flow as possible. Now, there's many elements to being in flow, and we're going to focus on 3 key elements which are particularly relevant when we're working in a remote environment. Okay, so the 3 elements here are really quite straightforward and quite obvious. And the good news is we all know how we want to be treated when we're at work, and for our teams, the basis is exactly the same. So let's have a look at what these things are. So clarity is, what's expected of me. I need to know whether I'm doing a good job or not. So if I haven't got that clear expectation around, then I'm in the dark a little bit about how well I'm doing. Consistency. Don't keep changing the story. I'm sitting in my office working by myself, and I need to know that what you said yesterday is going to be what you're going to say tomorrow, unless there's been some significant change. And you might be wondering what the strange orange bear's doing on the slide. I'm of an age where my kids grew up cuddling things called Care Bears, which made them feel nice and warm and loved. And that's a Care Bear. And care is the 3rd C in what really matters. And it's all about giving our people what they need to do their job. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So we'll start off with clarity. If we want people to achieve something, then we really need to make sure that they know what we expect of them. And an expectation can be couched in a number of ways, and there's a list of things on the slide there that could well help us with detailing an expectation. So why have we asked somebody to do something? How does it fit in with the company's vision? How does it fit in with my specific role? Is it something that is a part of my job role? Is it something else that you've asked me to do because of some other great reason? So why is quite an important element of clarity. What is it that you want me to do? What are the boundaries? What exactly is the thing that I'm supposed to be getting on with? When do you need it done? What's the urgency? Is there some other deadline? Who's impacted by the task that I'm going to be doing? Am I working on it alone? Is it part of a team effort? Is somebody else going to be marking my homework? Who's involved? Who's engaged? Who's impacted? And how are there any constraints around how I should be doing this, or do I have a completely free hand? Now, we can all take a look at that list, and I'm sure there's lots of experience out there and people saying, oh, well, actually, maybe you should have put this in, or that's in the wrong order. The point is, it doesn't matter. We're all different. And as a manager, you need to understand how to express what you want someone to do in a way that is meaningful for them and in a way that they can follow and understand. And as a remote manager, it's even more important to be able to articulate with absolute clarity. And remember that to be, as a manager, it's your responsibility to make sure that your people have understood what you've said. It's not enough to send out an email and expect people to understand exactly what you meant, who it was aimed at, who's doing what the constraints are. You really need to make sure that people have understood the messages that you're giving out. And that's something that we'll come back to later on. Remember that people receive information in different ways. People react differently to different communication methods. So you really have to know your team and understand what their communication preferences are, so that you can make sure that you're expressing things in the most appropriate way. There's plenty of profiling tools that are available. If they're available to you in your organization, use them. It's very difficult to rely purely on intuition when you're remote from the people that you're working with. And when setting expectations, it's really not possible to over communicate. The more you can express the different ways, different communication methods that you use, checking after you've sent out the messages or had a conversation with someone, checking that somebody really has understood things in the way that you intended is really important. So we all know about SMART goals. There are other approaches, but SMART's a good place to start. But what I want to say is more around the goal rather than how to set a specific goal. That's pretty much the same whether you're remote or whether you're co-located with your team. But we want to use goals to do a number of things. To get things done, yes, that's the kind of classic reason why we'd set a goal. But we also want to use goals to develop our team members. And that can take a number of forms. Maybe we want to give somebody an opportunity to gain experience in something that they've not got much experience in. Maybe we want someone to learn a new skill. Maybe we want them to work with people they've not worked with before and see how they cope with that. So there's quite an important development aspect when we're setting goals. And the other reason is perhaps we want to see how somebody's doing, and we want to use a goal to assess them in some specific way, maybe against how they've worked with somebody or whether they've been able to leverage the experience in a new environment, that kind of thing. So in a remote situation, we still use SMART or whatever other mechanism you use, but you really need to pay attention to the resources that somebody needs to achieve their goal, and what support they're going to need along the way as well. So how do we make sure that the team member has everything that they need? What support are they going to need? How are we going to measure their progress? And how do we know if they need help? These are all questions that you're going to need to resolve yourself for your employees when you're setting goals and helping them understand. I'm struggling a little bit changing the slides here. It's taking a while for the controls to work. Oh, it's gone on 2 now. Splendid. So we're going to have another poll now. I think, Daniel, you've just started to put that up. Is that right? And the objective of this poll is just a quick question to say, as managers, what are you spending your time doing? What are you spending most of your time on right at the moment?
So the poll should be on your screens now. If you just want to click on one of those options for us. Nigel, moving forward, if you just want to use your cursor, just use your keyboard instead of the...
Yeah, I've been using the keyboard, but it's not worked, so I've had to revert to the mouse, Daniel.
Okay.
I know we tested it beforehand and it was all fine, but...
technology sometimes. So we've got the results coming back through. What are you spending your time doing? So we have problem solving at the top with 30%. Then we have none of the above next. So it would be interesting to maybe get some comments in the chat on what you are spending time on. Team playing is next, and goal setting at 15% each, and removing barriers for the team 12%, reporting 6%.
So it'd be interesting to, yeah, in the chat perhaps just mention some of the problems that you're addressing at the moment. That's a good blend of things, and we'll see how that plays against the things we're going to talk about now. So I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't really like the term performance management. A lot of people think that performance management is what a manager's job really is, but I kind of fundamentally disagree. For me, performance management feels like we're constraining people. We're checking up on them. We're making sure they're doing things the way we want them to do. You know, it's all about rigid status reports, frequent checks, reviews, what's been done, what's got to be done, what's going to happen next. You know, sometimes you wonder how people have got the time to actually get their work done when they're busy reporting back the whole time and answering questions. For me, I prefer the term performance enablement, and that's all about the manager's role as removing barriers and enabling the team to succeed rather than checking up on them the whole time. So with performance enablement, our role is to match the tasks that we have to get delivered to the needs and capabilities of the team. We might need to spend a bit more time in goal setting, looking beyond the task, discussing and agreeing how to get clarity and understanding. But then once we've done that and everybody is clear as to what needs to be done, the manager steps back, gives the team space to achieve their goals, and then we spend our time removing obstacles and solving problems. So the fact that problem solving was the highest on that list in the poll is a good thing. I think that shows we've got a group of people on the call that are well on the way to having management as a performance enabler rather than as a controlling function. So how does remote working impact on both these styles? Both need a manager to regularly interact, both with the team and with the individuals. With performance enablement, those interactions are all about clarity, understanding, finding out what the barriers are, you know, supporting the team and the team members. And over time, that kind of approach builds trust and respect. And without trust and respect, remote working becomes much more of a controlling function, and that leads to a downward spiral. Okay, we've got a lot of spurious text on the slides here, Daniel. I'm not sure what's quite happening there. By far, the most important element of managing people is communication. And when we're working remotely, that's absolutely multiplied. You know, communication is a vital enabling tool across all three of the elements we're looking at: clarity, consistency, and care. And we're lucky today, we've got a whole wide range of options. You know, technology is a tool, and we just need to know how and why to use it. Having the massive range of communication technologies available can be a curse as much as it can be a benefit. It's very easy to constantly get people onto video calls, to have call after call, team calls, individual calls. and they can just steal the time away rather than improve the quality of communication. So as a manager, our role is to achieve specific outcomes by leveraging the skills and experience and works of other people. So we need to set direction, set goals, develop people, monitor progress, remove barriers, solve problems, provide space, and look after the team and the team members. And all of those things demand a high degree of communication. So think about what interactions you really need to make, and think about, how important are they? How urgent are they? Are they one way? Do you need to get input? Do you need to get a consensus from people? Do you need to communicate to a group or to individuals? And are you just sharing basic information, or do you need feedback? And then you can match the communication mechanism you're using to the need. So if you're sharing basic information, perhaps an email is all that's required. If you need instant feedback, maybe a video conference is best. So just be aware that communication takes time away, and time is our key resource. So make sure that you're matching the communication style with the needs, and you're communicating appropriately. And that's really important, to not distracting your team more than you need to. So having laid out that warning, I'm now going to contradict myself almost by saying regular contact and communication is vital. And so really it's a balance. If you think about the difference between working remotely and working co-located with your team, the big huge difference is the level of interaction between team members. When you're in an office, there's a constant chatter, people bump into each other, say hello, reflect on what they're doing. There's a lot of interaction that goes on, formal, informal, planned, ad hoc. And when you're remote, that disappears, that's gone. So as a manager with a remote team, you need to recreate as many opportunities for that interaction as possible. And you can use all of the technology to help with that. You can have regular team calls, you can have team social media groups, chat rooms, one-to-one telephone calls and video calls. You can even use the old-fashioned physical post, and send a little card to somebody who's done well and say that was really great, thank you. Now these sorts of things mean a lot, and they don't take an awful lot of effort. So although we need to monitor and be aware of how much time we're taking with our communications, ensuring that there is inter-team communication, interpersonal communication, formal and informal, is really important. One of the things we do, for example, is we have coffee chats, virtual coffee chats. We realize that when we're in the office, every now and then it just so happens that everybody's standing around with a cup of tea in their hands, shooting the breeze and having a bit of a chit chat. So we set up calls every now and then where we all go on to it's a Zoom call, and we deliberately don't talk about work. We just talk about other things. Feels a little bit artificial, I'll be honest, the first couple of times you do it, but after that you relax into it, and it's just nice to be able to chat with your fellow teammates again. And so the last thing I want to go through on this slide is courageous conversations. The sorts of things, they're the more difficult conversations that it's very easy to put off because you don't really want to upset somebody, or you're not sure what the reaction is going to be like. Well, in a remote environment, it's still important to have those conversations. In fact, it's probably more important to have those conversations. If something needs addressing and you just leave it, it can fester, and you can turn a small issue into a really big burning issue if you're not careful. Now, holding these difficult conversations is subject of its own workshop. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything here, but what I will say is, have the conversations, have them in a formal setting, avoid hearsay at all cost, stick to facts, focus on observed behavior, be clear about what you're saying and any specific actions, and follow up with a written statement so that all of the facts are recorded should there be any follow-on actions to be taken. Okay, so we've looked at clarity. We're going to move on to consistency now. And if clarity was important, consistency is absolutely vital. Consistency is the platform that we use to build trust and respect. And being consistent in what you say, and more importantly, what you do, is absolutely key to making sure that you are the sort of person that people can trust, people can respect, and that's the way that you get your team working more effectively. We need to be consistent in a number of different ways, and I've got some things on the slide there. So first of all, over time. Don't spread your fantastic vision one day and then say something completely different the next day. Make sure that you've got something to say that is going to last, and you're not just going to confuse people or occupy their time. If you've got something to say, be consistent over time. Be consistent between people, and this is really important. Don't tell one person one thing and somebody else the complete difference. Your team, even though they're remote, will be talking to each other. And if you're telling one person one thing and one person something that's contradictory to that, they'll find out and they'll wonder why. And that will chip away at the level of trust and respect that you have. And it's the same at different levels in the organization. It's no good telling your team members one thing and your manager something completely different. Again, people have networks in organizations, and people will find out that you've been saying different things or talking about people differently behind their back or to their face, and that will damage your level of trust. We talked a bit about moving from management as a control to management as an enabling function. Well, management as an enabling function is built around trust and respect, and if you don't have a good bond of two-way trust, that can never work. And so a lack of consistency is the quickest way to destroy that, and once it's gone, it's very hard to get that back. So trust and respect. Trust is, and respect is not a right. You have to earn it, and to earn it you need to really want it, and it's not something that you say. It's the way that you do things, the way that you act, and it's the way you act over time. And if you want to know whether your team trusts you right now, just ask them how they're doing and how they're feeling. And if the only way you can get them to honestly reflect back to you is by offering them anonymity, well, then you've lost that battle already. You don't have that trust, and you're at the beginning of the journey to start and build that. So it's a combination to build it. It's a combination of your attitude, your will, and your behavior over time. Show people the real you. If you hide behind a mask, they don't know whether they're supposed to be trusting the mask or somebody they don't know behind the mask. Have a clear vision. Give people a reason to follow you, and then be consistent with that vision over time. Treat people honestly and respectfully. And it may be that they don't treat you in the same way to begin with, but you can control your own behavior. So do that. Act in the way that you want people to see you, and do that authentically and all the time. And care about your team as people, not just resource units. You know, be empathetic. When you do something, understand the impact of that action in their terms, and don't just do it once so that you can demonstrate a point. Do it all the time. Okay, so we're moving on to care now, and care's slightly more difficult. It's not so much about tools and techniques. Um, you really have to care about your team. If your team don't matter to you, then you won't matter to them. So we've looked at how trust, integrity, and respect play a part in moving from control to enablement. When you get to enablement, you're going to spend most of your time taking care of the team. Now, we're not talking about big arm waving, flag bearing, hey, look what I've done for Joe over there. We're talking about things that happen in the background that are invisible to other team members. You know, the unseen, regular acts of kindness. You can consider each one of those as an investment in the bank of goodwill. And it's important as a manager to have a good count, a good balance in the account of goodwill, so that when you've got to make some difficult decisions, you can fall back on that, and the team will understand that you're trying to act in their best interests, even if the things that you need to do right now might appear to be unpalatable at the moment. So care is a mindset that you need to have, and you want your team to have that as well. And it's not just manager to team. It's not even just that and team back to manager. You've also got to care about your organization. You've got to care about achievement, and you've got to care about each other. So let me just move on. Here we go. So give people what they need to do their job is more than providing tools. Tools are important, but if you don't know how to use your tools, then they can really just get in the way. So let's talk a little bit about what the bigger picture is around that. So we can start with tools. Tools and technology are great. They can help drive consistency. You know, if we're all using the same tools, it's easier to share workload. It's easier to share information. And we can use the same tools whether we're in the office or whether we're working remotely. So that level of consistency within the tool set is really helpful. You know, if you need special equipment to do your job, then as a manager, you better make sure that people have got access to that equipment wherever they need to work. And for remote workers, specifically, the tools that we should be interested in are things like communication and collaboration tools. You know, there's lots of different types of tool, email, video conferencing, instant messaging, all of those good things. So decide what types of tool you need, and then for each type of tool, choose a specific tool and make sure everyone in your team is using the same specific tool. Otherwise, you just get lots of issues between not only using the tools, but in supporting them as well. So the next thing on the list is training. Tools are useless if you don't know how to use them. Training is available. You need to make sure that training is available for all members of your team, and that everyone goes through that training so that they can make the best out of the tools. There is an incredible amount of time wasted with people struggling with their basic workaday tools. And in a remote environment, that gets amplified more and more. One thing you can do is you can nominate a team champion, for example. There's normally somebody in an office who is the world's expert in a particular tool that you're using. And if somebody has a problem, they'll go over to that person's desk and say, hey, can you help me? And that person will take a great pride in making sure that all the information that the person needs is provided to them. Well, you can still do that remotely. you can have team champions. The thing to watch out for is that they spend their time doing their proper job, and they allocate just a small amount of time to being a team champion. So that means they have to just respond to the simple cases. If there's a more difficult issue that needs someone to go to the vendor's support organization, for example, then the champion can do the onward forwarding of the problem, but they mustn't try and sit there and solve it themselves. So you just have to manage around that. But team champions is a good way of encouraging interaction and helping people feel good about themselves when they've helped other people. Experience, giving people what they need to do their job. Experience is a big thing. It's essential for a team to grow. Everyone needs to gain new experiences, and we also need to work out how do we best leverage the experience that we've got in the team as well. And the final thing on this list is space. We've agreed our SMART goals, we've provided the tools and the training, worked out who's developing experience and whose experience we're leveraging. Get out of the way, don't look over people's shoulders. Use your time to care, to remove the barriers that the team's facing, to take care of the issues that they arise, and to solve the problems. And the good thing about managing as an enabling function is people are able to come to you and share when they've got a problem, when there is an issue, when there is an obstacle they need to overcome, because you've kind of dealt with the fear. They're not going to be afraid that you're going to bawl them out or fire them because they can't do something. They know that you're there to support them, and so it's a much more positive conversation to have. And the next thing is to understand how people operate. So breaking news, people are different. And they're different in many ways. Maybe in the chat you can capture some of the different ways you think people are. We're going to look at 3 dimensions that are particularly relevant for remote working, and I'm sure when we get to the things in the chat, we'll see that a lot of these other things will be covered by the 3 dimensions we're going to look at. So the first of those is working preference, and some people prefer to work in groups. Some people like to work alone. Some people are the life and soul of the office, and some people sit quietly at their desks. Some people volunteer for everything, or some people wait to be asked. And these working preferences don't change just because people are out of the office and working from home. So as a manager, you really need to make sure that the lone wolf stays in touch with their teammates. And otherwise, their mental health and their productivity is going to suffer. You need to make sure the more gregarious types don't spend all of their time with online chat to their work buddies, which is going to be taking time away from their work buddies as well as themselves. You don't have to stop and be rigid about these things. Just be aware of it, and if somebody is overstepping the mark, or if somebody is withdrawing into their shell, just reach out to them and help them get back into a more positive way of working. The next preference is learning preference. We all need to learn, and in our remote situation, it's kind of difficult to organize physical workshops and seminars and things, but there are plenty of virtual options, and the CPDSO, in fact, are doing a great amount of work at the moment, working with various organizations who provide training, helping them move either their existing training into virtual, or developing new virtual offerings themselves. So the CPDSO is a great place to start if you're struggling to understand what's available or where to go for it. But understand the learning preferences of your staff and then try to match their specific training needs to the offerings that are available. And pick the ones that are best suited to the individuals, and that way you can maximize your investment in training. And the third area we're going to look at here is communications preference. We've already highlighted that successful remote working is dependent on comms, and people receive information and react differently to different methods. Some are visual, some are auditory, etc., etc. So understand the blend of preference within your team and use all of the appropriate mechanisms so that you're not favoring one section, you're giving everybody equal access to the information and the communications. And for complex and important things, use more than one mechanism and check understanding with each individual member. Even after you've done a grand video conference to make some big announcement, that's all good, but go around your team and check with each of them that they've understood things in the way that you intended them to understand. Working remotely is a great opportunity. It can be really liberating for people. There's no commute is the big obvious one, which gives people more time and less stress around their working day. The technology that we're all using generally gives us 24/7 access to the facilities, so work patterns can change. Remote working means that some people can be completely location independent and work from pretty much absolutely anywhere. So as a remote manager, you need to work out what the new boundaries are. Are 9 to 5 really necessary? Or maybe you can have a set of core hours that everybody works so that they can communicate more easily, but actually you don't really care when they start and when they finish, provided they're online or within the core hours. Maybe it's okay for people to work 3 really long days rather than 5 normal days. There are endless possibilities, but what works for you, what works for your team, and what works for your company. Be flexible, but just remember that your team is employed by the company to do work. Be flexible, allow some tweaks to working conditions. If you can do that and help a team member, that's great, but only if you can do it without compromising the outcomes that you're expecting from them or inconveniencing other team members. You have to be fair and equitable and make sure that things benefit the whole team if you can. But if you can be flexible and do something to make somebody's life better for them, you can do that and build trust and respect and goodwill at a very little cost. The other side of the fantastic benefits of working from home is well-being is more difficult to look after. It's pretty hard to spot in a physical environment when someone's dealing with something difficult in their life. But we generally work out that somebody's a bit grumpier than usual. Maybe they've missed a deadline. Maybe they've forgotten to do something. Just a whole lot of little things that kind of add up. Well, as a manager, you have a responsibility for your team, which includes looking after their well-being. Not acting as a doctor or a counsellor, but spotting when their behavior has changed. Maybe they're doing something uncharacteristic. Maybe they're communicating like mad with everybody, or they've withdrawn and they don't communicate much at all. Your job as a manager is to know enough about somebody to spot these things, and then knowing them well enough to be able to approach them and talk to them and maybe suggest ways of helping. Now, as I said before, it's not for you to be a doctor or a counsellor, but maybe you could suggest that they go and chat with a doctor or a counsellor, or maybe you've got an in-house support team for the staff, and they could go and have a word with those. you'll be pleased to know this is the last slide. Just a quick summary then. We've looked at 3 elements of managing that are important and slightly different in a remote world. Clarity, what's expected of me. Make sure people really understand what's expected of them. Consistency, be open, honest, clear, and consistent when you're talking at different levels in the organization, when you're talking across with different people, and over time, really, really important. And care, looking after your people is the best way that you can get your team really working. You can move from management as a control to management as an enablement and help the team grow even through these difficult times. And we talked a lot about communication. Communication is key. It's hard to over communicate in an environment such as we have now, where there's lots of uncertainty. Sharing information and being honest and consistent and truthful with your people is absolutely key. And use video chats where possible, because a lot of our communication, the vast majority of it, is non-verbal, and a video chat is much, much better for passing over messages and communicating with people on a higher level than just a simple audio message or an email. And the best method, the best technique, a little tip here for ticking the care box, is to actually care about your team and make sure that they see that in your actions, not just your words. So I hope you found this session useful. I'm sure there's lots of questions. I can see things in the chat, but I've not had an opportunity to read through that yet. If you've got any questions that we've not managed to answer, feel free to contact me with the email address there, or through our website or telephone. I'll be pleased to have a chat with you, or you can message me on LinkedIn. And with that, I think I will hand back to Daniel.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much, Nigel, for that thorough presentation. Thank you so much. We are going to move forward now, and we're going to move forward onto Amanda. So we've got Amanda back with us now. Brilliant. And welcome, Amanda, back with us.
Thank you.
She is the founder of the CPDSO, which is hosting this wonderful webinar that we are all on at the moment. She is actually my boss, so I better be careful on what I say. It's either brownie points or the boot at this point. I'm gonna go for brownie points. She's a lovely manager. I can actually say that like firsthand. Yeah, her managerial skills are well received, definitely well received. So thank you very much. So at this time, I won't say much else because we are running short on time. Please do get your pencils ready for Amanda.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, and thank you for that compliment. That was really lovely.
It was straight from the heart. It was straight from the heart.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
You should have control now, Amanda.
Okay, have I got control? You know me, everybody. I'm terrible at the technology. Great at CPD and training, but not so good on the technology. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to figure out this whole managing people remotely when you're running a coaching, training or education business. This is, I mean, we've said it many times over the last couple of weeks. It's not only unprecedented, it is the most surreal, challenging and difficult period I think any of us have experienced. And it's not on the personal front, it's on the professional front. And this whole experience, I mean, for me, you know, remote working, well, quite frankly, it gives me a headache. I can't reach out to people easily. I can't see visual or verbal cues because there's so much email, and you know, you can only do so much on Zooms. People start talking over one another, etc. So it's a really strange time for us to adapt to. And I'm sure that many of you will potentially agree with me that whilst remote working, as Nigel picked up and said, you know, it's lovely in that we don't have a commute anymore, it's also incredibly frustrating. And it's difficult to know what to prioritise and what to do first, because I'm exactly the same as you guys. You know, I'm looking at, well, how do we carry our organisation through this successfully, and how are we going to come out of it? So I'm really short. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm just going to go through some slides I've put together to give you some direct advice, and I've called them the key stepping stones. And I googled stepping stones image just to see what I could find, and I thought this one was really interesting. There was a picture of a bridge and a set of stepping stones. And I think normally when we're running businesses, we're on a bridge. We know what we're doing and we're just sailing on over the river. When we're taking stepping stones, we're having to be much more careful. We're having to put our feet in the right place and work out whether we're treading in the right direction. And for me, this is very much what we are doing at the moment as an organisation, but also what we're seeing several training, coaching and education businesses doing. We're all advancing very, very carefully, and that's quite difficult. The normal challenges that nearly every business that we work with who are accredited face are visibility. So it's difficult to make yourself stand out from the crowd if you're offering training in a certain area, because the training market is so busy. People normally struggle with differentiation. So how can you show and display that your management training or your communication skills training or project management or whatever it is different to other people? And also there's quite a big lack of understanding about CPD, but we're not talking about CPD today, we're talking about remote working. So if these are our normal challenges as businesses, and those that we've helped and coached and guided our accredited organisations through for nearly a decade now, we're really quite sympathetic that you're kind of grappling with all of this as well, on top of this remote working situation. So, oh, hang on a minute, it's not letting me click. There we go, right, okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit further about, you know, those stepping stones that I think that we should be taking. But I just wanted to also give a few membership and community updates, because it's lovely to have so many of you join us today and dialing in from all over the globe. We have been running these as open sessions for members and also subscribers to the CPD standards community. Today, we're going to follow up with a short survey that we'd really like you to participate in, because as well as the polls, we want to find out from you what your biggest challenges are, so we can then start to create some assets and resources for you. We've also got a couple of things coming up for members. So there is a member-only session following last week's webinar on how to use LinkedIn to drive your business. So watch out for that. And then finally, we've got a series of broadcasts coming through, series of emails where we've started to collate some of the information and wonderful expertise that we've been learning from over the last couple of weeks. So that's just a little update for you. Oh, I need to stop clicking the wrong one. Okay. I can't click my slides. There we go. There we go. Sorry. I'm a technical dinosaur. Okay, so stepping stone 1. It's really important that you freeze frame today. And you need to take a big perspective and get a snapshot of what's going on. You just need to stop, give yourself a couple of minutes and try and rise above and get that bird's eye view. What does your training, coaching and education business actually look like from a remote working and virtual delivery organisation? So what is happening? What if you were to look above, what would you see? And you need to sort of take a picture of that in your mind, or draw it out, mind map it, bullet point it, whatever suits you. Now, it's really important to take a picture when you're up in the air and not a selfie. Okay, and I say that slightly in jest. You may remember many years ago, there was this slightly unreal picture that was taken of Obama and Cameron taking a selfie whilst they were at somebody's funeral, and totally inappropriate. And it's really important that when you're taking that picture and you're looking at freezing frame, you're not looking at yourself. We've all got work to do on how we're remote working. I find that delivering these sessions, I've undertaken an awful lot of CPD myself, but you've got to get that overall picture straight in your mind. And I'll just give you a little bit more information about that as we go on. I want you to think back also to the session that we delivered with Gina Gardner a couple of weeks back on coping with psychological pressures of COVID. And remember, you know, and this was something that Nigel very much talked about a couple of slides back, about the fact that people are on their own. It is lonely at times, and acts of kindness, or I loved the suggestion of a virtual coffee break, is really, really important. And you need to connect with your colleagues and your clients in a slightly different way. And you need to potentially be quite innovative about how you're actually going to do that. And that communication piece, I mean, you know, your trainers, your coaches, you know that communication is key. And so when you're taking that bird's eye view, you need to look at, okay, well, how am I communicating with all of these different stakeholders? How is that going? The next thing you've got to kind of realise, and this was sort of something I was reflecting on whilst we were putting this content together, and also having worked with all sorts of different training and coaching and online learning businesses over the last couple of weeks, is that there's a very strange kind of balancing act that's going on at the moment. And people are finding that their businesses are feeling like they're a bit toppled, because there's no face-to-face delivery for anybody that does run classroom events, seminars, conferences, face-to-face coaching, etc. So that's taken the rug out from under our feet. We are remote working, and then we're all dependent on different technologies. And some of those can be very, very hard to adjust to. So you've got to sort of think about the fact that on the other side, pre-COVID, all we were really worried about, if we were remote working, was just one or two of us working from home, that we just had our learning portfolio to look after, we had our colleagues to manage, and we were just kind of running the business as well as we could. And that's not happening at the moment. And so if you are feeling out of kilter, or you're not sure what to prioritise, it's because this is happening. And I'm seeing it across all sorts of businesses at the moment. And I think what's really clear is that, you know, we're all going to have joined the wrong dots at times. We're all going to look back at COVID and lockdown in a few years' time and how we reacted professionally and all the things that we did. And hindsight will be a wonderful thing. There'll be great innovation that comes out of it, but we'll also be making some mistakes along the way because we can't quite see where we should be going. You know, we're treading those stepping stones very, very carefully, and sometimes we just don't know which ones to get. And I think that's something to be aware of, but I think it's also something not to beat yourself up about. Every day, every week, things are unfolding, and it's sometimes difficult to know which way to tread this journey. I know for all of you, including us, when you put your business plans and marketing communications and forecasts together for 2020 and kicked off in January with a new year and New Year's resolutions, None of us would have dreamed in 1,000 years that in March this would be happening, and will now be having a big effect going forwards. So keep that in mind, and then look at how your business is structured, and just use this little image here. At the bottom, you've got your frontline customer service and your new inquiries, okay? So that is where, you know, you continuously, hence the arrow at the bottom, need to have a high amount of energy, a high amount of clarity, as Nigel referred to earlier, and keep your mind clear, all right? Every contact point you have with clients, with prospects, with ex-clients is really, really important at the moment, and that is what's underpinning your business. The next is service delivery, and how you're executing your training, coaching or education online, and your technology infrastructure. And then at the top, obviously, there's your sales pipeline, making sure that you've got happy delegates and a well-organized business. But in terms of looking and working with other training and coaching businesses, over the last couple of months and seeing those that have pivoted and are kind of doing extremely well now, it's definitely those that have put this in the priority list, and then given all of them, as they've worked up the levels, the same amount of energy and clarity of mind. So you kind of got to put together this kind of route map in your mind of how you're going to do it. You've got to think about digital culture. So again, something Nigel touched on. So Edgar Schein, somebody who I could talk about all day, a very, very famous academic who came up with the concept of what culture is. And he defined it as being something around the organisation where people make basic assumptions. So it's kind of what we do around here. On that builds the company values, which many companies now have as very, very obvious and broad statements about what their values are. And then on the top of that, what are the physical artifacts and creations of the business? And that's not just necessarily the product, if you're the manufacturing business, it's all the hard copy brochures, the pictures on the wall in the office, everything, okay? But Edgar was always talking about an environment where we were all together in an office, because his theory was this theory came out of the 1960s, 1970s, so it's pretty old now, but still very much respected. And when you're managing your team from a coaching and training perspective, you've got to make sure that you're carrying all of these over, and you're thinking about that as you're communicating with your colleagues. People's assumptions right now of how they are working for you within your accredited CPD business will have changed. And so the basic assumptions that were there, like, you know, I'm going to go to the office and my boss is going to be there at such and such a time, and I've got this meeting, etc., and the coffee machine's always there, blah, blah, blah. That's all changed. So you just need to think about, okay, if we shift this and it's all now virtual, what is this looking like? And, you know, coming back to your values and reiterating those to teams is really important. And I especially liked Nigel's point about just asking people, how are you doing? How's it going? And just silence afterwards and seeing, you know, what they're thinking and feeling. So as I said, thinking back to that loneliness point, you know, it's not just you that's feeling that, it's all of the people that you're managing. So moving on to the next slide, if I can do that. So why isn't it behaving itself? Daniel, having problems changing the slides, any reason? Oh, there we go. Okay, so, sorry, it's moving a little bit slowly. So I sort of wanted to then round up really in terms of, you know, the fact that you've got to shore up that business. So you take all of Nigel's fantastic expertise and points about, you know, being clear, having clarity, showing a lot of care and a lot of kindness, but also at the time taking steps to really kind of ring fence your business and understand, okay, what is this going to look like in the future? Somebody asked me yesterday, a long-standing colleague of mine, on email, do you think the future is going to be the same when we come out of this as it was going to be? Do you think people are going to go straight back to what they are doing? Or do you think it will change? And I think all of us have got a different perspective on that. They then said to me, you know, I was asked a really interesting question yesterday, which was, do you think there is now time to see a new future and visualize a new future? And I think that's really, really important, because yes, it is a time to innovate. It is a time to imagine your new world. You know, digital learning is going to be at the very forefront now of people's minds as we move forward. And because of that, and because of the fact that there is this huge outpouring of kindness, of global community that we've seen, and with COVID, every country is in the same boat, I'd very much urge you to not see your competitors as pure aggressive competitors, but rather as connections, as people that you can learn from, just remotely. You know, don't have to be their best friends by any stretch, but look at how, you know, they are potentially structuring and managing their businesses, and perhaps looking at then at how yours businesses is being put together. So as I said, you need to join those dots in the best way that you can. How you do that is just connecting with all the stakeholders, everybody that's present within your business, your suppliers, your clients, your ex-clients, your prospects, the IT company that might support you, your bookkeeper, anybody who has a financial share in your business. Look at everybody and look at how that's all coming together, and really, really prioritize those relationships, because that is what will emerge from this situation. It will be a changed relationship with people. And last point, I've sort of worked up the points here a little bit, is just take time to reflect on the pressures, because your pressures right now are very, very different to the ones that you used to have. So is that a good thing? Are these easier pressures to deal with, or are they harder? So just think about that. And that's my kind of 2 penny worth, if you like, for giving some advice on how you can sort of manage people remotely, but from more of a strategic perspective. So I'm going to hand back to Daniel now, and we can take some Q&A. I know that we are overrunning slightly, so let's just take a couple of questions, and very happy to have another follow-up session if it's of interest.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Amanda, for that presentation and that piece. Thank you for those who have stayed with us and remained to the Q&A section. Please do get any questions in that you do have. I know this is quite it really is a topic where, you know, you can take information and then reapply it. But if you do have any specific questions that you have, maybe we haven't touched on it in this presentation, maybe we have, please do feel free to ask them now. I am going to just run another little poll quickly, if you could just stay with us for 1 second. I do like to do these just to see how much information you've retained. So this is a good one. Let's see how much retention you've had. So in the light of the presentation given today, what are the 3 C's that really matter in management? Nigel covered this, so let's see. There is a bogey option in there that might trip some of you up. So please do read carefully. Should be on your screens now, if you can all just give an answer for that one. I can tell you it's 100% correct so far, so good. Oh, no, that just fell off. It's no longer 100% correct. Competency, consistency, and care, someone put, but yes, the answer is clarity, consistency, and care. Thank you everyone for participating in that. The bogey, if you didn't notice, the real bogey was character, charm, and good looks.
Charm will certainly get you into certain places. There's no doubt about that.
Hopefully no one put that one. So yes, if there is any questions to come through, please do post them up. We do have a question that was sent in, a couple questions that was sent in prior to the webinar from Susan. So I'm just going to read them out for yourself, Amanda.
Okay.
And Nigel. So given the current situation, many field team members are currently on furlough. Any advice on maintaining individual and team engagement, both during this time and as they are brought back from furlough, particularly if this is not at the same time for the whole team?
Do you want me to go first, Amanda?
Yeah, you take that one first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is a really good question, and I think there's going to be a lot of thought and planning needed for reintroducing people back into the workplace. People will have changed, their notions have changed, their feeling of and sense of belonging to organisations will have changed over time. But you know, it's a question that is really needing to be answered for a specific case rather than for the generic case. I think there are some things we should all be doing, and they're all around communication, making sure that where we have information, we're sharing that information with as many people as we can. You know, being consistent with that. If you don't know anything, it's actually still valuable to go out and say, look, we're trying to find out, but we don't currently know what the situation is. As soon as we do know, we'll share that, and then make sure you do share. So I think honest communication and information sharing is the key thing, but really it's going to be specific to your business, I would suggest. Amanda?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, as we've both said, communication is absolutely key. One of the things that's really stood out to me, and I have seen some businesses doing, not just training and coaching businesses, but others, is that just because staff are on furlough doesn't mean that they're completely out of the picture. They're not allowed, obviously, to work for you under the government rules, but they are still allowed to train. So if you have an opportunity, if you have colleagues on furlough, then it's a great time to be giving all of the team, those that are furloughed and those that are not furloughed, different pieces of information to update them, perhaps invest in some training yourselves, and do things that basically still bring the group together. I think a lot of people that are furloughed, certainly colleagues and good friends of mine that are, you know, they very much feel that they're out in the wilderness now, and finding it, you know, hard and very strange to pass the long days without any work to do. So, you know, the best way is just to engage everybody within the business, those that are furloughed as well, and keep that communication going. And if you can't find any training, then quizzes have become popular on Zoom. So just get somebody, you know, just get your team together once or twice every couple of weeks to just, you know, share their experiences.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Amanda. Sorry, Daniel. And one, you know, there is a detail about the furlough scheme, which is when you're furloughed, you're allowed to volunteer.
Yeah.
You can actually volunteer to work for your own organisation. So if your own organisation maybe wanted to do a community project or something, maybe you could volunteer to do that together.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Got another, a really good one actually from Barry. It's composed of 3 questions in one, so listen carefully. As I listened to a CIP webinar last week, the head of learning for CIP said face-to-face training is dead, and it made me wonder why. So I guess that's the first question. As a group of learning and development professionals within CPD, should we be formulating a strategy as to how we can resume face-to-face sessions? That's question 2. Hairdressers are currently lobbying the government about returning to work earlier than July 4th. I hope you get that. Should we be formulating a plan to identify a strategy to get back to face-to-face?
I'll take that one, if that's okay. Yes, absolutely. We've maybe not thought that far ahead yet, but Barry, you raise a really important point. People are social, we're humans. You know, there will be, once we've got the all clear and a vaccine or whatever it is, shops, restaurants, cafes, they will be booming once everybody knows that they're safe. We want to be in groups. And so, you know, if hairdressers open and only one client is allowed in at the time, then maybe we start to think about strategies for training businesses, whereby perhaps you run a course with only one delegate in the room, but you have 10 dialed in remotely. Or, I mean, this is just off the top of my head, or something similar. But definitely we need to have a plan in place, because I completely disagree with the CIPD. I don't think face-to-face training will be dead. As I said earlier, digital learning will have a different presence and a different priority. But ultimately, if you want to train a team in some very, very specific skills to meet a particular business objective, then you need to bring them into the same room and talk them through that.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what you've said basically, Amanda. I agree. I don't think training face-to-face is dead. I think we'll see virtual training take a larger place in the market, but there are certain things that it just makes no sense to try to do virtually when face-to-face is so much better. You know, maybe we'll all be sitting outside for a while doing face-to-face training, but there will be some face-to-face presence in the training after this is all done. I'm very confident.
Maybe we get this trainer. We should maybe get some ideas coming in. Maybe a trainer stands in a field with a loudspeaker, and all the delegates sit 2 meters apart and 2 meters behind one another with sun hats or umbrellas. I don't know, but we definitely need to be thinking about this. So thanks, Barry, for that point.
Joe Lambert echoes that. He says, as good as tech is, I still think face-to-face is the way to go, especially from an engagement point of view. For me, I'm very much in the hands of my clients. When they decide it's safe for staff to return to the office building, that will be my green light to return to face-to-face training. Barry just followed up and he asked another question. Would CPD be prepared to head up a project of willing L&D professionals to come up with a plan for face-to-face training?
Absolutely, it's a great suggestion. Yeah, let's catch up about it offline and put a message out. Absolutely, I think it's a great idea, Barry. Planning for the future, as I said in my session, you know, that's what we've got to do, and it will be a new world. It will entirely be a new world in terms of what we think about and what's important to us. So yes, we'd love to be involved with that.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any more questions that they would like to ask? I know that we have run mightily over time, so she was 24 minutes over. I thank you so much for your patience and for staying with us and for asking those questions. If anyone does have any lingering questions, please get them off your chest now. I'll let Nigel start off with just saying the bye-byes for now. If you do have any last questions, please just put them in the chat.
Great. I promise I'll be brief. Thanks everyone for coming along. I hope you found the session interesting. If you want any more information, please contact either the CPDSO or you can come to our peopleinflow.com website and contact us through that.
Fantastic. Amanda?
I just wanted to say, first of all, a big thank you to Nigel for co-hosting the session. I thought, you know, it was really, really interesting to see how People in Flow, you know, approach this topic and the advice that you've given. It's certainly something that I will take away with me. And so thank you so much. Thank you all to everybody who's joined us. And our webinar sessions, a little bit like our face-to-face events, do get longer and longer as we run them. And then to everybody else, you know, stay well, stay safe, enjoy the sunshine, plan for a new world, and let's just keep going.
Fantastic. Like mentioned at the beginning, the slides will be available along with the on-demand version of the webinar. So that look out for that coming soon. Everyone that registered will get a copy of that. And we will be back again next week after having a look at our polls with another weekly CPDSO webinar. So look out for that email as well coming soon. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you for staying on with us. Have a great afternoon or morning wherever you are, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Just one more thing, sorry, just one more thing. There will be the follow-up questionnaire with the slides and the recording, and if you could all take 3 minutes, that's all it's going to take to fill it in, we would really appreciate it. We're also going to be asking whether you'd like to co-host one of these sessions as well. So yeah, we would really appreciate your participation in that questionnaire. Sorry, Daniel.
No worries, no worries. It's a good point. Thank you for adding that on. Okay, everyone, have a great afternoon, morning, night, wherever you are, and we'll see you again next week, hopefully. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.